The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After he had fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. After doing so, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, he came toward them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once Jesus spoke to them. "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter, and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord. This Gospel passage has two events that are so dramatic, so amazing. Our Lord himself walking on the water, and then Peter walking as well on the water, albeit briefly. These two remarkable events so capture our attention that perhaps we don't notice what comes in between those two moments. Something very, very important. The Lord speaks to Peter. And I say this is very significant because each of us must ask ourselves, do we believe that God speaks to us? Yes, we might wonder, how could it be that Jesus would walk on the water? Especially, how could it be that Peter? But how could it be that Jesus can speak to us? There are many people in this world, of course, who do not believe in God at all. And there are many people who do believe in God, but consider God a very impersonal, distant force. No more likely to speak to us than the force of gravity or electromagnetism. God is somehow out there, and he stays out there. And I suppose at the other end, at the other extreme, are those, perhaps you know someone like this, who believes not only that God speaks to them, but just chats with them all the time. You know, God told me that tonight I should put some sliced almonds on the green beans, really to give them more flavor. Oh, really? Very interesting. And some of us hear other people talk about God talking to them, and we wonder, what are you talking about? Does God speak to us? The challenge for us, perhaps, is that we were built, we were made, we were created to have a hankering for God, more of God, than we experience in this life. The saints tell us that somehow in this world, we do not have all that we were meant to have. And we feel it. And so we want to go closer to God. We want to know Him. We want to hear Him. And there can be something vaguely unsatisfying. And yet the church teaches that in this life, all of our experience of God is mediated. We do not have an immediate contact with God in this life. The closest we get happens in just a few moments, where Jesus gives us His very body and blood, His soul and divinity. And yet our hearts hunger for something even more. And we wonder if God is in fact real and personal and interpersonal, able to speak, able to listen to us. This miraculous event on the water is meant to remind us that indeed our contact with God is real as it was for Peter. And though Peter doesn't come off doing so well in this episode, neither do we in this life in our efforts to listen to God and to speak to Him. But I encourage each of us here tonight not to grow cynical, not to give up that hunger that God puts in our hearts, one day to be face to face with Him, one day to hear His very voice. Why should Peter have all the luck? Why should only a few ever hear that voice and behold that face? In the meantime, God does speak to us. Yes, in a mediated manner, through creation, through the smile of a little baby about to be baptized, through the ups and downs of life, through His Word, and most profoundly through His sacraments. And as we hear the Lord speak to us, albeit distantly, let it stir in your heart a desire one day to speak to that same Lord who spoke with Peter. A day will come. This little baby doesn't seem to know it. But grow up a little bit, little baby Sophia. Maybe by the time you reach your 40th wedding anniversary, you feel the moment getting closer. Soon and very soon, you will no longer be able to hear that voice, only distantly. One day, you will see the Lord, and He will call you by name, and He will say to you, as He said to Peter, "Come. Do not come only that you might fall. Do not come that you might drown. Come and enter the eternal dwelling that has been prepared for you. I speak to you," the Lord does, I speak to you by name. Soon and very soon, we will hear that voice.